I'm going to explain how to your lead generation as a real estate agent. There are 5 main problems that most real estate agents experience with their lead generation. I own a company that has worked with over 800 agents from top 10 teams to mid-sized teams to new agents alike, and these problems are just plaguing so many agents. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to solve them. So number 1 is relying on leads from third parties. So these are companies like Zillow Flex Program, these are companies like realtor.com, sync leads. So there's a lot of these companies that essentially sell you the leads based on their marketing. And this is the case for about 50% of the real estate agents we talk to. They're usually buying leads or paying for referral companies, right, to generate these leads. While this sounds good on the front end, right, you don't have to do any marketing, you don't have to create any content, you don't have to do basically anything to get these leads except pay for them. The problem is the cost of these leads. So if you use a Zillow Flex program, you're going to pay a 40% referral fee for that company. What that means for you, if you're in a market like LA, well, you're paying like $10,000, $15,000 for every listing that you generate. In addition to that, your brokerage takes 20% cut from your commission. So now at that point, you're stuck paying 60% of your commission already before even processing your marketing expenses, before even processing your driving expenses, anything like that. So at that point, you can basically even generate revenue, right? But if you're paying most of the revenue to other sources, again, there's no point in doing that. The other problem we see is that, okay, if there's no referral fee that you're paying for another company, you're obviously going to pay for these leads yourself, right? So you're going to pay a cost for these leads. And usually nowadays, the cost itself compared to return you generate has been approximately 2 to 3x. So meaning if you spend, let's say, $5,000 on leads from XYZ company, right, you can expect to get, let's say, around $10,000 to $15,000 back. And again, we experience that same exact problem where half of your revenue is basically going towards another company. And the problem with that is that, again, when you look at your margins, when you look at the actual money that you have left after doing that, you will have a little bit, but you're pretty stuck and your margins are going to be very, very tight. Very difficult to grow your business that way. Now, even if all these things are true, right, meaning even if you're getting profit, right, even if it's okay, right, at the end of the day, when you look at the quality of the lead, that's another problem that you're going to experience, right? So most of these times, if you buy a lead from realtor.com or any of these third-party lead generation companies, you're going to get stuck with a quality of lead problem. What that is you're getting like 20 leads, 30 leads, 50 leads a month, but a lot of these leads, they already have a realtor they're working with, they're already doing something, they're just not interested, they're not qualified, right? And so what you're stuck doing essentially is filtering through these leads. So you're getting these leads coming in, right? But then maybe 1 in 30 of these leads is actually qualified, or maybe 1 in 100 of these leads is actually qualified. So at that point, right, if you have a conversion rate of, let's say, 1 in 50 or 1 in 100, well, you're going to get stuck with a problem in terms of your time, right? Because you're spending all that time calling all these leads, filtering through these leads, having to chase these leads, and then you cannot scale your business because how can you scale your business, right? Because all of your time is going on chasing leads, right? Qualifying leads, filtering through the leads. Now, even if you chase all those leads, even if you do all that work, well, at that point, you still have to pay for these leads, right? So you're stuck in that endless cycle where, okay, you are doing some revenue, you're doing some business from that, right? But you're stuck at a specific point. Usually it's $100,000, couple $100,000, right? But you're still stuck at a certain GCI because you have that problem with your margins, right? You cannot really increase your spends, and you're also stuck in terms of your time, right? You cannot really increase the amount of hours you work, right? Because then you couldn't call all the leads on time. So that is the first problem. And last problem is obviously going to be the brand you create, because you're actually not creating any sort of long-term brand when you buy leads from third-party companies. What I mean by that, right, is let's say you're running YouTube ads for listing lead generation, right? And let's say you would be stuck in this situation, which you're not, right? But let's say you would be stuck in the same situation, you're getting 2 to 3x ROI. Well, if you have your own systems within the next year, within the next 2 years, you're going to have millions. So many of our clients have experienced 1 million to 2 million impressions that you generate as a result of running these ads, right? However, right, you're not getting that brand with Zillow, you're not getting that brand Zinc, right? Because you're paying for those companies, they're building their brand, right? And most likely, let's say Zillow, right, probably going to take your business away in the next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, right? They're always sinking down to profits, right, for real estate agents, right? So if you don't have your own brand, you're basically stuck in this loop with Zillow, realtor.com, and you don't have any way out, right? Because you don't have any way to build your own brand, right? But if you build your own systems, you build your own brand, what ends up happening, right? Even if your return is 2 to 3x, in the next year, everybody knows you, right? It's a local marketplace. Everybody's familiar with you. They've seen you on YouTube, right? They've seen you on social media. So now you have a bunch of people referring you business. You have a bunch of people giving you business. You have built a pipeline of listing leads, right? They're seeing you over and over again, right? So those leads that came in a year ago, now they're reaching out to you, asking you for your help, right? And so you're building that brand. So basically, at the beginning, both of these platforms, they start from this linear place. You kind of like, okay, you're spending money, right? You're getting leads, you're converting the leads. But this is the third-party lead gen software kind of solution that you see. It's always the same. It never really changes. Usually the cost per lead goes up, right? So it's getting worse and worse every single year. However, if you build your own listing lead generation system, same exact thing, but over time it has that exponential curve where a year later, 2 years later, 3 years down the road, you're becoming that number one agent that's most familiar with the market. So when you spend money on your own systems, you're actually getting paid to build your brand. So really the benefit of that, right, is then, okay, marketplace is very familiar. Even if you don't spend anything on ads, you're still getting business, you're still getting money. And obviously you will build that authority in the local marketplace. So if you think about a pie like this, right, you start off with a certain market share, but if you build your brand and you get those impressions, you become a better choice than other people because you're more familiar, right? So you build a market share as well. With these third-party lead generation services, sure, there's an element of, let's say, Zillow leads where you can kind of think of that as a market share, but you're not really doing anything with that. So meaning what happens is like, okay, even if you get Zillow leads, right, you're building your business that way, there's an element like, okay, let's just sell the house in a way that is sort of like building your database. But as far as an actual market share in terms of your brand, you're not getting any piece of the pie in terms of that, right? Because again, Zillow is the one giving you those leads. So instead, build your own systems for lead generation. Specifically, listing lead generation is a very, very good idea. Your cost per lead is lower, your brand is better, you get long-term revenue, so why not do it? It's not really too complicated if you get help with it. The returns are better, and also that way you can scale a lot further, right? Because if you go from a 2 to 3x ROI, actually most of our clients, they see 5 to 10x ROI, right? So that alone is already better. I mean, from the first month, you're getting a better ROI compared to Zillow, right? So why not build your own systems? What's the point of, paying for a third-party company except just being a little quicker, right? Because then you don't have to do any marketing, right? But the fact is, like, okay, you build your system one time, you have that system for life. You can use it forever, right? So why not just figure it out and build your own system so you get all of those benefits because you'll be a realtor for a long time. Now, the second problem is lack of tracking. So what I mean by lack of tracking is that, okay, people use these companies, right? Zillow, realtor.com, or let's say you're even running a Facebook ad or a YouTube ad. Let's say you are doing the right thing. What is the problem? People are not aware of their numbers. So they're not aware of cost per lead. They're not aware of cost per listing appointments. They're not aware of their cost per acquisition, right? And that's actually why, right, a lot of people are using these companies because they're not tracking their numbers. They're not aware of their ROI. They don't know, okay, if I pay 40% for Zillow, right, what is that, right? Because what it is, it's about $10,000 to $15,000 if you have $1 million listing, right? Well, what is my cost per acquisition? It's 10 to 15,000, right? But if you use, let's say, YouTube ads or you use Facebook ads, right, your cost per acquisition is basically never that much. I mean, you would need to generate like 1,000 leads from social media in order to pay $10,000, right? So it basically never happens. But however, people are not aware of it, right? Because they don't track their numbers. So having said that, the problem of not tracking your numbers is that you're not aware of what is the actual problem, right? Because if you're not aware of the problem, okay, are you paying too much for a lead? Are you paying too much for a listing appointment? Are you paying too much for your cost per acquisition? If you're just not aware, right, there's no problem. You don't know there is a problem in the first place, right? And if you don't know the problem, you cannot scale your business because how could you, right? You're just stuck at making a certain income, right? And you're just doing that over and over again. So instead of being completely unaware, create yourself a tracking sheet. And we have a tracking sheet we use internally, which is something we give to our clients. But if you're not a client, obviously just create your own tracking sheet and include cost per lead, include cost per listing appointment, include your cost per acquisition, and track every lead source you're getting, right? Track every lead source separately and see, okay, which one is giving me the lowest CPA? Which one is giving me the lowest cost per acquisition, right? Which one is giving me the lowest cost per lead, right? Compare the costs and benefits, right? And then based on that, you can then at least optimize your lead generation, right? Let's say you see there's something that's waste, cut it off, right? Replace it with another source, right? And that's the whole point of that. And then if you can track it, right? Let's say you go from a situation where you have like 2x ROI and then some platform doesn't produce you anything. And you're kind of wondering, well, what's going on? Why I'm not getting business, right? Well, now you just, okay, let's cut off the one that's not giving you anything, right? You save money. Then, okay, you have a 2x ROI. You ask yourself, okay, can I get a 5x ROI, right? And so now we cut this off. We change it to 5x. The one that didn't produce anything, right? We change that to 5x, right? And now we can start scaling our business, right? We can start increasing the spend, right? And now we can grab more of that market share, right? Because you're getting more of the leads, and therefore you're grabbing the deals from other realtors they would have gotten had you not done this yourself. And so there's an incredible benefit to just tracking, just being aware of these numbers. And regardless of how simple it sounds, I would say 80% of the real estate agents are not tracking their lead generation at all. And lastly, what this also impacts is going to be your consistency. So a lot of real estate agents struggle with the fact that, okay, some months are better than others as far as like lead flow. So they get more leads, and then some months they're getting less leads. And a lot of realtors are in this loop where, okay, their lead generation, right, it's slowing down, and they're wondering why that is. So why did last month I had XYZ transactions, right? What did last year I did 20 transactions, but this year I have only done, let's say, one transaction, right? And so they have that problem, and then from there they try to find a quick fix. So instead of finding out the problem, right? Is it the cost per lead? Is it that cost per acquisition? What is going on over here? They're trying to find a quick fix. Let's say they cut out the lead generation service and then they try another lead generation service, right? They kind of always in that cycle. So they have a problem, they find a new lead gen service, or they try some sort of tool or widget or something like that. And what happens, right, is they're a little bit like shooting blind. They don't know, is it their cost per lead? Is it the amount of leads? They don't know if it's the cost per acquisition because they don't have the tracking. And so this lack of tracking actually leads into the third problem, which is your consistency. So if you think about, let's say, a stock portfolio, right? So if you think about, let's say, a stock portfolio, what is the worst possible stock portfolio, right? Well, it is a stock portfolio where there is one stock. Why is that the case, right? Because the one stock may be doing well, but if that one stock happens to crash, like that happens with a lot of stocks, right? As an example, Tesla stock, imagine you have all your money in Tesla stock, right? Well, there are months where it goes down 50%, right? Just nothing. And the thing is, if there's no multiple stocks in your portfolio, right, you're going to have this big kind of like cycle where you're getting leads, you have no leads, you're getting leads, you have no leads, right? And so you're very reliant on that one lead generation platform. And then at some point, the lead generation platform is going to crash and you don't have anything. And so if you think about consistency, right, how do you create that consistency? Because the fact is that if you don't have consistency with your lead generation, right, you won't have consistency with your listing appointments, right, or listing agreements. You also don't have consistency with your buyers, right? And what that means is you don't have consistency with your income. And as a real estate agent, if you're a full-time real estate agent, if you don't have income coming in for 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, well, that can put you out of business if you do that long enough, right? And so what we want to do in order to bring that consistency is to diversify your lead generation flow. So if you think about an index like S&P 500, right, where we have 500 stocks that are the top stocks in the market that always changes based on the market, right? Well, that is much more stable. It looks a little bit like this, sure, maybe some crashes, right? But over the long term, it is much more stable, much more consistent as far as the other strategy goes. And that way, right, unless for some reason, right, the whole country disappears, right, or whatever, right, S&P 500 has been all good for the whole time of its existence, right? And if you think about the S&P 500, the same would apply to your real estate lead generation where you have multiple sources. You have one source, which is, let's say, your paid ads you do on social media. You have one source, which is, let's say, organic marketing you do with YouTube. And then you have another source, which is, let's suppose, your database, right? If you add in more sources of listing appointments and leads, you can diversify your lead generation, right? And now you will have that consistency. And then if you track each one of these, right, you can just diagnose the problem, right? Is it the cost per lead? Is it your cost per listing appointment? Is it your cost of acquisition? Is it your number of leads, right? This is all in your control if you control these numbers. And if something is not working, right, you will know where the problem is. If you don't have enough leads, right, you can take a look at your ads. And then in your ads, you can take a look at, okay, what is going on with the ads? If the ads are no longer working, you can just record new ads. So the shiny object syndrome, right, the quick fix problem a lot of real estate agents experiences with the lead generation services, right? You won't have to do that. You don't have to change the whole lead generation that you're doing, learn new lead generation process, pay for something to fix it, right? If you just use the same process, you can just fix the bottleneck if you know the numbers. And that's really allows for that consistency, right? Because obviously if you change your whole lead generation, right, you go from one lead generation source to another, that's a completely different process. And you never know if it's going to work for you or not, right? And so that brings in that inconsistency in your business if you're always having to change your lead generation service because you're not in control of it. But if you diversify it with things that you can control and you track those numbers, you will be able to have much more consistency as a result of that. Now, let's go ahead and cover the fourth problem most real estate agents experience, which is a lack of trust. So this means neglecting personal branding. What do I mean by this? Well, a lot of real estate agents tend to do generic marketing, right? So they buy leads or they use some sort of automated tool to run their lead generation over online, or they use some sort of automated content, right, in order to put themselves out on social media. The problem is that, okay, if we imagine 10 local real estate agents sitting like this side by side, right, if you're the same as all these 10 real estate agents doing the same exact things, right, there's nothing that makes you stand out. And if there's nothing that makes you stand out as a real estate agent, what is the only way you can differentiate yourself? Well, it is just a commission, right? You have to lower your commission, or you have to use some sort of trick, right? Like overprice your property or something like that to win the listing, right? And so if you are a carbon copy real estate agent, the other problem is that you will be labeled as a carbon copy real estate agent, meaning, right, people will be skeptical. They'll be like, hey, you're calling me, or are you just trying to get the commission, or what is going on over here, right? They'll be like skeptical when you call them. There's gonna be lack of engagement, lack of that warmth you may be experiencing with your sphere where you get that warmth, right? But when you try to go outside of your sphere, you're not getting that warmth. And so ultimately, right, there's a lot of resources being wasted by the fact that people are just not realizing that, okay, you are the real estate agent over here, right? If you could separate yourself from all these other real estate agents where people want to have specifically you, right? We're just gonna have so much more time available, right? Because you're not chasing after people, they're coming after you. So you go from having to chase to people to come to you. And if you can do that, where you can kind of like qualify yourself for the homeowners without them needing to be sold on working with you, right? That is when you can build a situation where, again, you can work with people more, you can actually sell the houses, go on listing appointments, right? As opposed to spending all of your time prospecting, doing cold calling, doing door knocking, chasing after people. And that is the full point of personal branding, right? So personal branding, the whole idea, and actually what a lot of lead generation companies out there or lead generation in general tends to miss is that with real estate, it's not just the fact that we're getting leads, right? So if there's like 1,000 homeowners over here, right, that are in your marketplace, right? It is not the fact that we just get them to, let's say, ask you for a list of homes, right, or ask for a property valuation, right? It is not that we need to do, but what we need to do, right, is to establish a qualification point. And what I mean by that, right, is there's somebody that's only working with realtors, right, that are only speaking Korean, right? If they want to have a Korean speaking real estate agent, there's nothing you can do. They're going to select real estate agents that are looking to get, that are speaking Korean, right? But the same applies to you, right? Maybe you have a background, as an example, by in living in the area for 30 years, right? Or maybe you've been fishing or whatever case may be, right? Whatever your personal interest, you have a background in corporate space, you have a background in the teaching, whatever the case may be, whatever background you have, right? That's actually your strength. And the problem is that if you delegate your marketing, like you buy some sort of tool or just use your KV Core content, right? You're not really qualifying yourself for the lead, right? Because they don't have no idea of who you are. They have no idea about your case studies, no idea about your background, nothing about you. And if there's no trust, you're ending up chasing after people and you have to drop your commission to compete against these other real estate agents. And so personal branding is an incredibly beneficial and incredibly powerful tool for you to build trust, build connection, and qualify for yourself for the homeowners without you actually having to be one-on-one qualifying yourself because you're doing it one too many. So make sure if you're not yet on the content side, right? If you're not doing content like on Facebook, on YouTube, right? If you're not doing unique personal content, make sure that you start doing so because that alone can already increase your business without even needing to pay for leads. And you can get high quality leads where people are reaching out to you. Now, sure, it takes some time, right? I'm not saying it's you go out there and you don't spend any time to make your marketing, but if you compare it to chasing after people, ask yourself, okay, which pill I want to take, right? The one where I have to chase people 20, 30 hours a week to get my business, or the one where I have to spend like 5 hours a week to create content, right? Both take some time, right? Both take some skills, but I mean, which one do you want to do in terms of your business model, right? I mean, obviously the content creation side, personal branding side is much better option compared to spending thousands of dollars on Zillow leads, talking about $5,000, $10,000 each time you get a listing, right? On top of that, then spending all the money, right? And spending all the time chasing after leads, right? So compared to that, obviously do the personal branding. Make sure you're doing this. If you're not doing this yet, start doing this. Now, lastly, the biggest problem in terms of lead generation is push away nurturing. Now, you may be wondering, what is push away nurturing? Well, push away nurturing is basically bad follow up. Push away nurturing. It's like that salesperson that calls you 30 times when you already told them that you're not interested, right? And it's a little bit like, let's imagine you're in dating woman, right? You're going on a date, right? Or unless you are a woman, you're dating a man, right? Whatever the case may be, like you're going on a date and there's just something off. There's just so you can't get that ick, right? A lot of that in real estate space, when that term ick comes up, right, in the dating world, that same thing happens in real estate when people are posting spammy marketing. So spammy marketing, it's a little bit like you going on date and being super weird, super odd. And you may be wondering, well, how can my marketing be so odd that it turns people off, right? Well, when you think about it, if you're sending a generic marketing email that is clearly taken from KV Core, right? I become your lead and you're sending me like automated email that has no personality, no value, and it's just trying to convert me or just doesn't do anything in the first place, that's very unattractive to the lead. Why, right? Well, the reason why, because if you're sending stuff like that, they're going to mirror that back to their marketing. So if they think about selling their house with you and you're sending a bunch of spammy stuff, right? What are going to think, right? Well, the photos are probably not going to be that good. Probably not going to be that good marketing, right? They'll automatically mirror your marketing to their marketing, the service that they would receive as a result of working with you. So how do you go about fixing this is actually the same as we already covered. Make sure your emails, make sure the retargeting ads that you're actually showing, right? Make sure those are actually authentic, they're unique to you, they actually talk about the local community, they build the trust and connection, and they're truly written by you. So sure, there are templates you can leverage, there are some help you can leverage. Leverage help, get coaching, right? Get help with it, but make sure that emails themselves, that they are not just blank copy-pasted emails, but the real authentic info about you. And ideally, I don't say you have to do this, but ideally, make sure you have some video marketing in there. So you have a video about yourself talking, where you're showing a property or just giving some tips, stuff like that. Going back to that personal branding side, right? Because nowadays, the marketplace is just too competitive. There's too many real estate agents, right? And if you don't have any personal marketing, I mean, let's be real, who is going to take that listing? The one realtor that is doing the video marketing, that is showing them the properties, right, that is actually building trust and connection, or the one that is sending random emails, right? So the one that is doing the personal branding is virtually always going to take the listing, assuming all the things are equal as far as everything else. They don't have any other advantage like language or something like that, where they only want to work with that realtor, right? Assuming all the things are equal, right? The realtor that is differentiating themselves is usually going to take that listing from the realtor that is not differentiating themselves. So make sure you're not spammy, make sure you don't do bad follow-up, right? And create unique, real emails. Don't only focus on the lead generation, because while lead generation is good, the thing is, most leads are not going to sell their houses today. It's real estate, right? They'll sell their houses a month later, 3 months later, 6 months down the road, 12 months down the road. So even if you're doing great lead generation, you're getting 100, 200, 300 leads a month, right? You still have to do most of the work after the fact that you get the lead. And nowadays, the way it works is not the way that it used to, where you just call people and say, hey, are you ready to sell a house? Hey, are you ready to sell a house? Oh, now I'm ready to sell my house. It doesn't work that way, right? People are looking at stuff online. People are wanting to look at content. People want to go to your website. People want to look at your case studies. People want to see that you've actually delivered results. And the way you can demonstrate that to people nowadays is through mostly digital world, right? Make sure you have a good website. Make sure you have good content, right? Make sure you demonstrate these results. And the benefit of that, right, is the fact that you are doing those things passively. I mean, you do them for one time, and that can be thrown into your whole database. All the leads that are coming in can automatically go to that sequence, right? So you only need to do it one time, and then if you do it one time, you can basically nurture your whole database. So it actually saves you a lot of time and brings you deals, which is something you definitely want to start doing if you're not doing yet.